All right, and we're back for another episode of Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Inside Sports Fantasy Football. The Lakers fast break, Pop Culture Cosmos, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football and Domination Sports Nation, it is truly appreciated. And I also want to give everybody a big heads up. We got a new kind of partner in the way, along with our other sister program, the Lakers Fast Break. They managed to work out a deal with the awesome daily fantasy sports place, Thrive Fantasy. That's Thrive Fantasy. So if you're interested in the daily fantasy sports app, the best one out there is Thrive Fantasy. All one word, Thrive Fantasy for you at thrivefantasy.com. Just go there or the App Store or Play Store. Go ahead, download the apps, the Thrive Fantasy app. You can go ahead and use the promo code LFB. That's LFB when you sign up. And you know what they'll do at Thrive Fantasy? You will receive an instant deposit of up to $50 on your first deposit of $20 or more. So basically, they're going to match up to $50 as long as you put in at least $20 to catch in. Don't put in 20. If you put in 20, they put in 20. Put in 30, they put in 30. Up to $50 matching up right there. When you sign up with Thrive Fantasy, they've given out over $2 million in prizes already as a company. And they wanted to go ahead, and they've got tens of thousands more, including they've got $50,000 set aside for winners in NFL Week 14. So you want to go ahead and check out thrivefantasy.com, or if you want to download the app today, it's Thrive Fantasy, ThriveFantasy on the App Store or Play Store. You'll be glad you did. And good luck, because not only can you do NFL, Major League Baseball, PGA, NBA, which is coming right around the corner, and esports as well. So enjoy Thrive Fantasy today for your daily fantasy football fix, for your daily fantasy fix. All right, guys. Week 13, we were not actually here. We do apologize. We had some scheduling issues. His agent, the guy's agents, and my agent couldn't get together on the time, so we truly apologize for that. But we are back and back strong once again for Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and back again for another great show. Our two great guests indeed. In fact, my fellow hosts on the program. You want to go ahead and say hi to the Lardieris? First off, it's the man himself. Domination Sports Nation is the place to go. It is one of the awesome hosts who just turned, as I told him before we went on the podcast, matches my IQ now. It is Dominic Lardieri. And Dom, great to have you on the program here today.
Thank you, and it's always nice to be on.
Now, you cannot use Thrive Fantasy yet. You have to wait until you are legal gambling age, just to let you know. I want to let anybody know out there. So I'm not enticing you per se to go ahead and do it. But anybody else out there that's of legal age in gambling and they're interested in daily fantasy sports, Thrive Fantasy, baby. Got to go ahead and check it out. Also with us today is a good man indeed. He is the man behind at Chris L Sports on Twitter, Chris Ardieri on LinkedIn, and also as well the Domination Sports Nation. It is my good friend indeed. It is Chris Ardieri. And Chris, man, we're gone a week, and look what happened.
Yeah, everything gets crazy, and in some leagues you're looking down the barrel of a playoff race like we are in one of our leagues, and things really got interesting. I know we missed last week, with Dom's birthday and all happening. He held out for a little more money. I'm pointing the finger at him, but regardless, it's good to be back after a 1 week hiatus. And I guess maybe we should take more weeks off. More craziness will happen in fantasy. I don't know, but it went from start to finish. The games itself were good, and it culminated last night. And Dom and I see this happen once a year, and it happened to us last night. We had J.K. Dobbins going. We're playing. We're in fifth place. We're playing a team that's fourth. His uncle Steven, my brother-in-law. And at one point, we were watching every single carry Dobbins had, and we got to a point where we were 0.12. Yes, you heard that right. Points ahead of our opponent. And then late in the game, Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram driving the ball down the field late in the game after a failed onside kick. And what happens? Thank you, John Harbaugh. He gives the ball to Dobbins. He gets a touchdown. We win going away by over 6 points. And that's the beauty of fantasy when it works for you, right?
Absolutely, my friend. But I want to ask you this as I go ahead and make sure all the groups out there know that we're on the air. I wanted to go ahead and ask you this. Did Dom celebrate his birthday in kind of the same manner that James Harden celebrated some time off from the Houston Rockets?
Somewhat. Somewhat.
Well, I think Mom would be rather upset if he did a mano-a-mano to James Harden.
Here's why I say somewhat. He demanded to go play somewhere else, and not in this case, not through the podcast last week. But no, in all seriousness, we had a nice socially distanced birthday with family and friends driving by, and we got to enjoy a lot of football. And I think you and Dom need to have a side podcast about the NBA season, especially one James Harden and his former teammate Russell Westbrook. He's got some thoughts on those guys.
Well, you're always welcome. I was hoping to hit you up last week and we would go into detail on that. So we'll have to set something up here in the next couple of days before the season gets started. Because I'm looking now that we have our partner with Lakers Fast Break in our good friends at Thrive Fantasy, I'm looking to do more and more episodes of the Lakers Fast Break. And I would love to have Dom on as far as for that's concerned. But did you get Dom the same present that LeBron has now, as I saw him smoking down one of the freeways? I think it was the Santa Monica freeway. I don't know, just off the top of my head. But I don't know if you caught wind of, LeBron James leaving practice the other day, and he was hightailing on the freeway in his, custom-made convertible. I didn't know if you got Dom one of those for his birthday. Did you?
No, not yet. And the only reason being is his sister is about to hopefully pass her driver's test, so she would demand that car first.
Okay, fair enough indeed. But it was a great NFL Week 13. A lot of things to cover because it is now playoff time. It's now getting down to business. In one of my leagues, I am fighting for a playoff spot and fighting actually to stay alive in the playoffs. One of my other teams, I'm actually done so well at 11-2. I've actually got a bye in the first round, so that's kind of nice where I can take a week off, essentially, on one of my fantasy teams and not have to worry about it, so I can focus solely on my ESPN league right now. But guys, I want to hear your thoughts as we head into the playoffs right now for fantasy football. It's getting hot and heavy. The guys and gals that couldn't cut the mustard, they're out. But everybody else is now fighting to go ahead, scratching, clawing, to go ahead and continue on in the playoffs. I need to get the guys, or I need to get the players from in your opinion, and I'll start with you, Dom. Who's hot right now in fantasy football? Who do you need to go ahead and ride on as far as and take you all the way to a fantasy football championship? Who are the hot names?
Well, we have one of them on our teams, and his name is Devonte Adams on the Packers. He's just great. I mean, Aaron Rodgers loves to throw to him when he really doesn't have anyone else to throw to. He gets 2 touchdowns a week, it seems like, and he's scoring 20-plus points a game. It's almost like he's a quarterback.
It's awesome to see. And I'll tell you what, with Aaron Rodgers, who I have on my winning football team, throwing touchdowns to him, it seems like it's a great combination right now. Chris, who do you have in mind as someone that people absolutely need to ride? Obviously, Mahomes is an easy call. Right now, I will talk to you guys here in a second about the quarterbacks. There's some quarterbacks I have some questions on, so we'll go ahead and put that to the side for a second. But give me some names of some running backs, wide receivers, or even kickers, somebody that's going to go out there that you need to ride out. Maybe they're on the waiver wire. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're starting. I don't know. I just want to go ahead and hear some names that are hot that people need to ride on right now that they may have forgotten about.
Yeah, I think if you need an RB2 or maybe someone deep as a flex, if you're dealing with guys that aren't producing, like I just mentioned, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he seems to be getting more and more carries each week, more fantasy points. There's one right there. Beware that Ravens still seem to kind of be rotating through that committee, but Dobbins has been getting the goal line love, and that's what you want. Another guy who we happen to have on the same team on Devonte Adams, and this is why we're right now looking like we've got a good shot at a playoff spot, is Justin Jefferson, the rookie wide receiver from the Vikings. This guy's a beast. He's another one, seems to be scoring every week at will like Adams, but regardless, you look at him and his in-game stats, Cousins is definitely targeting him. With Adam Thielen back, it's only helped him more because I feel like teams really can't key on both those guys. And if you ask me, I think he's got to be one of the dark horse candidates for rookie of the year right now. That it seems like Justin Herbert and the Chargers are tanking, and it seems like kind of a wide open race. This guy's been phenomenal. The Vikings traded Stephon Diggs. They were criticized for it, and look, they drafted a guy who looks like he's going to be a bona fide franchise receiver for years to come, and I think he's a must start in fantasy leagues.
We know you guys have talked about who's hot and who must start in your fantasy leagues. Again, avoiding the quarterbacks right now because there's a big conversation a lot of people are having right now with quarterbacks. Dom, I want to ask you this. Who is cold right now when it concerns fantasy football that you might think maybe you want to go ahead and put him on the bench? Someone that was normally a starter that was doing well maybe at some point in time in the season or maybe throughout, but maybe it's hit a cold spot and maybe you want to go ahead and bench them for a week and see whether or not they should return back to the lineup at any given point in time down the road.
Well, I don't know, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of starters, but I'll name one. His name is Matt Ryan. I don't know if he's a starter at this point. Yeah, he'll get you a touchdown pass here and there. I don't know if he's really had a great stretch. He had that phenomenal game against the Vikings in the early weeks, but I just don't think he's a starter at this point.
Chris, do you have any thoughts on who to kind of like avoid actually starting right now because it's very hard to rely on? I mean, obviously, if you have injuries and you got to put that player in place, I get that. But is there any ideas that you have on players right now that are kind of cold or hit a cold spot right now that you may want to avoid starting at this point in time?
Yeah, I think the aforementioned Herbert at quarterback, I don't know what's happened to the Chargers. He was really chugging along nicely in the first half of the year, and I don't know if the team's quit on Anthony Lynn or they've run out of gas, but they don't look like the same team offensively. Another guy, and I'll qualify this by saying definitely start him this week because he's facing the Jets, but I'm not saying you sit him, but Russell Wilson has been kind of sporadic. I mean, the Giants really shut him down this past week. And, throughout the year, he's had games like against the Bills where he can be prone to interceptions or turnovers. So I'm not going to raise the alarm bells just yet. But if you head into the playoffs and he's got an unfavorable matchup, or maybe there's another quarterback you've got on the bench who might have a more favorable matchup, do not think twice about benching him. I know Wilson's great, and a lot of people are talking about MVP, but if he goes up against the wrong defense, he's an ordinary fantasy quarterback at periods during the season.
I agree with you on that. It's not the total MVP season that it was starting out to be because Russell Wilson was looking like the man indeed. So I am quite in agreement with that. But I guess we'll get to the quarterback since you already mentioned Justin Herbert. And you've also already mentioned Matt Ryan, and you've also already mentioned Russell Wilson as maybe ones to kind of like avoid, especially with Justin Herbert, just a promising rookie career, just kind of like went off the curve right there, especially after last week where they lost 45-0. Got a comments in from Trey S. Good evening, Trey. Glad to have you watching us. Made the playoffs by a hair. I know that feeling. I made the playoffs in my ESPN league by just that much. Full PPR, Don choose 2, Deontay Johnson, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Swift, or Gurley. And he said, thank you very much. I know Robert Woods for me has been a killer all season in both my leagues. So I want to go ahead and say Robert Woods for me has been great. But Dom, go ahead for you. You have to pick 2.
Well, first off, I would say Robert Woods. I agree with you because we have him on our team too. And he doesn't get touchdowns, but he'll have a big game once in a while, and he'll get you at least double-digit points without scoring. So he's one of my choices. And then the other one is DeAndre Swift. Yeah, he was injured. He hasn't played for 3 straight games, I believe, but he was scoring every week. And I just don't think Todd Gurley's been playing as well ever since he came back from his injury. So I think those are my 2 choices.
Chris, what are your 2? Because that's a pretty sound 2 to me. But again, we're both biased because we have Robert Woods on our team. So who would you think out of those two in a PPR league, a full PPR league, who would you go with at this point in time?
Definitely Woods for all the reasons Dom has said. I mean, we'll look at his points some weeks and be like, wow, he didn't even get a touchdown. I would lead towards Swift as well, but look, I know it's the Lions. We don't know how they're going to play with an interim coach. We don't know how they're going to play just because they're the Lions. So if you're on the fence, I think of the other choices. Deontay Johnson might be your best bet, but again, it's got to be situational. If you're looking forward past this week, even see what the matchups look like. But I do think my guess is with a new interim coach, I believe it's Darrell Bevel in Detroit. He's an offensive-minded guy that could benefit Swift. But my advice to you would be do your homework, read up, and see what the Lions are planning for him before you make your decision. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do a little digging this week.
Well, I do want to thank Trey S. for going ahead and sending in that question. If you guys and gals have any questions out there for us, that is Inside Sports FF on Twitter, also as well isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com. For Chris, it's at Chris L Sports on Twitter, and also as well Chris Ardieri on LinkedIn. He can answer any of your questions on fantasy football, or if you send it our way, again, that's isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter. We'll go ahead and make sure those questions get answered as well. But I wanted to go ahead and touch on the quarterbacks while we're here. I mean, like I said, we mentioned Herbert and Ryan and Wilson already as ones that are kind of like, although I would still keep Wilson as a must start right now. I do want to ask you this, guys. The situations that are going on with Kyler Murray at the top. Also as well, you got to talk about Desean Watson. And I was going to mention Justin Herbert, but we obviously know what happened to Justin Herbert. But with those two quarterbacks, Kyler Murray and Desean Watson, very, very mixed results over the past 2 weeks. In fact, with Kyler Murray, he lost his top spot to Patrick Mahomes after last week's disappointing numbers. So I want to hear your thoughts, Dom. Should you still ride with Desean Watson or Patrick Mahomes, or Kyler Murray? Or if in my case, which one would you choose? Because I have both on my ESPN team.
When you look at it, the Texans are a losing team. Watson doesn't have his favorite target, Will Fuller, and Brandon Cooks actually had a concussion. I think he's healthy now, but it seems like Watson doesn't have many pieces, where Kyler Murray, he has a lot of pieces around him. He has DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league, right by his side at quarterback. So if you're going to choose one, I'd say Kyler Murray, just because he's underperformed over these past few weeks, and I feel like he has something to prove.
He does have something to prove, at least to me, first of all. Trey, you know what? I wanted to go ahead and thank you again. I know you got chores to finish, so go ahead and take care of it, my friend, but we do appreciate you watching, and also when you're checking out anytime at all Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Chris, you heard the question with those two right there. And also, I want to go ahead and put in this as far as it's concerned. I talked about Kyler Murray. I also talked about, when it comes to Desean Watson, but how about also Jackson from Baltimore, who had a great weekend himself? He now pops back into the fray after a disappointing season. Should he be one that you'd be looking to ride all the way to a championship?
As hesitant as I might have been earlier in the year, you may be forced to now, because the Ravens are still clearly in the playoff hunt. They've got a very important game this coming Monday night at Cleveland, and we know they've had some great battles over the years. The Browns knocked them out of the playoffs a few years back. So with the way Jackson ran a lot last night, is he the Jackson of old? I don't know, but clearly something worked last night. And if you've spent a high draft pick on Jackson and your alternative as backup aren't that much better than him, I think at this point you're left with no choice but to ride him. I mean, if there's someone more substantial out there on waivers at this point, I highly doubt it. We're headed into the playoffs, but you never know. Teams that fall out of contention may go and just start releasing guys or tanking. If you can do that, great. But I'm guessing if you're a Jackson owner, you probably don't have a better choice on the bench. You're just going to have to go with him.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, that's very interesting. I agree with you on right now, because he is the hot quarterback heading into week 14. I am still going to go ahead and take Dom's advice between the two right now, between Desean Watson and also as well Kyler Murray. I am going to lean towards Kyler Murray starting this week. But that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out because he has not played, Kyler Murray, at the level like he has all season because he was heading into week 13 the number one scoring option out there in fantasy football entirely. So I'm hopeful to see if he can go ahead and rebound on that. I want to ask you this, guys. One last question before we go ahead and head on to the doghouse and give everybody an update on our Pick'em Challenge, which unfortunately I have to do anyways because, it's there. And he noticed my lack of enthusiasm. I think you can tell where that's going. But, Dom, I wanted to ask you this. We've talked about, obviously, wide receivers, but running backs are something that I think a lot of people are looking now to go ahead and get a beat on because the injuries have plagued a lot of the running backs this year. A lot of them have gotten back into the lineup. I know Christian McCaffrey and also as well Eckler from the Los Angeles Chargers, Austin Eckler. They've both come back into the lineup in recent weeks. What are you looking for right now in running backs as far as trying to go ahead and integrate them into going ahead and making a playoff push at this point in time?
Well, I've talked about this on previous shows, and I don't know if I'm biased now or what, but we have Ronald Jones on both of our teams, and you heard last week during their bye week, Bruce Arians says, we need this guy to get 20 touches, so that's a positive thing. They play the Vikings this week, and I think the consistency is there. He had that 98-yard touchdown a couple weeks ago, and then he had that long passing catch for a touchdown against the Chiefs. So he's scoring, and it seems like Leonard Fournette has kind of gone out of the picture where they were kind of splitting carries, and I think Jones has finally taken over, and he's on the throne now, and I think he's the starter.
There you go. That sounds good to me because he's on my team, though, that has a bye. So hopefully he'll be okay for this week, get through this week healthy, and then be strong going into the rest of the playoffs for me. But your thoughts, Chris, on possible running back options that are out there? Not necessarily you can find on the waiver wire because I know it's pretty much dry at this point, but running backs that people need to go ahead and focus on if they have them at the end of their roster.
The guy I like, and we have him, is Josh Jacobs from the Raiders. Now, he's hurt. He hurt his ankle. He sat out against the Jets. But I think what was interesting to note about that is you saw how the Raiders really struggled, especially on the ground, and almost lost to the winless Jets. And Derek Carr really had to rely on his arm more than anything this past Sunday.
And a call from a defensive coach that wasn't the brightest in the world.
Yeah, that doesn't help either. But yeah, let's also talk about how Carr probably could have hit a couple receivers for open touchdowns at various points in the second half of that game and missed. But regardless, terrible call by Greg Williams. But if Jacobs is healthy, they got a key game this week in Vegas against the Colts, two teams in the playoff hunt right now. And I feel like that offense looks much better when he's in there. Even if he doesn't get you a touchdown, he's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to get his yardage. If he is hurt, a guy that we've got, he didn't do too much this past Monday night at their new home away from home in Glendale, Arizona. But Raheem Mostert's shown some signs this year of looks like he's got his burst back since being injured. And I kind of feel like he was more a casualty of the fact that the Bills got up big and the 40 kind of abandoned the run at points, but I feel like him too. The 49ers are still in the playoff hunt, and as he goes, so goes their offense. That might be another guy situationally you want to put into your lineup, depending on who the opponent is on a given week. I know this week it's Washington, and that defense has been playing well, but if you don't have better options, at least he's a starter. He's going to get carries.
That's for sure. He is going to get a ton of carries, so people need to go ahead and look for Josh Jacobs, if you have him on your roster. I think he needs to be at least a flex. At the very least, he needs to be a strong flex option for you so you can go ahead and move on in the playoffs. That's what you're hoping to do. And in fact, I hope everybody out there gets a chance to go ahead and advance this week in the playoffs. And I wish everybody the best of luck. But before we head on out, guys, I want to go ahead and you know what time it is? Woof, woof, woof. It's time to go ahead to the doghouse.
Thank you, Gerald. Even though we missed last week, I'd like to thank my partner in crime here, Dom. We were looking through the underdogs, and we were both scratching our heads at as to why the Washington football team would be getting that extra half a point, 7.5 in Pittsburgh. Not only did they cover, they won outright in an upset and given the Steelers their first loss. This week I looked, there were some interesting lines. There were two that kind of stand out to me. I love underdogs, and I love home underdogs even more. And the Raiders are getting 3 at home in Vegas, and the Giants are getting 2 against the Cardinals in the Meadowlands. I'm going to lean here more towards the Giants just because I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with Jacobs. If I thought he'd play, I think the Raiders might even be my pick here. But I really like the way the Giants are playing, not just because I'm a fan of them and I like to pick on Dave Gettleman, but Joe Judge has done a phenomenal job with almost a no-name defense. They've got some guys you've heard of like Leonard Williams and Julius Peppers and Blake Martinez, but what they did this past Sunday in Seattle, stymieing Russell Wilson, I thought was impressive. And I know the Cardinals have a lot of offensive weapons, but they're really sputtering right now. They're struggling, and they can be stopped. And I feel like if the Giants kind of track Kyler Murray like they did Russell Wilson, that could be a recipe for an outright win. 2 points isn't a lot. I'd like it to be 3.5, but that's just me, of course. But I think the Giants have a real shot to win this outright. I'm going to go out on a limb. I picked them once this year previously as a home dog against an opponent that was a bird, the Eagles. So what the heck? Let's go for it again. Giants +2.
Oh, Giants +2 on a roll. He is on a roll indeed. So we'll see what happens, and you can find out what's going on next week on Inside Sports Fantasy Football. I swear, barring any unforeseen scheduling issues, we'll be back strong again, once again, for Inside Sports Fantasy Football. But before we head on out, I got to go ahead and update everybody on the Pick'em Challenge for Chris. Congrats, my friend. You are now above the Mendoza line. I know that was in the hundreds area as far as it's a baseball reference and under 200, but we'll just say it's 500. You're above 500 at 21-18 after a perfect 3-0 week. So congrats, my friend. Nice call. Nice way to go ahead and just get those picks right in there. And then there's me. Who managed to go ahead and mess up not 1, not 2, but 3 actual games I kind of miscalculated on. So I moved down to a record of 18, 19, and 2 ties. So I'm behind you now. You're now clearly above me. What a week. 1 week turnaround from me looking down at you to you going past me, and now you're looking down on me. So you're the man this week. You got it going on, and find out each week with our 3 picks that we have in the Pick'em Challenge. We go ahead and post that either late Saturday night or early Sunday morning. So check that out, and we update you each week right here on the show as well. But before we head on out, we also update you on what's going on with the latest episode of Domination Sports Nation. And Dom, you need to give us that update on what's going on with your awesome show that you can get everywhere you get your podcasts, the Domination Sports Nation.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Week 14 in the NFL season, and we'll be talking about fantasy, and the playoffs are on, so we'll be talking about that. And why not take a little peek at the NFL playoffs, look at the seeding right now and what can happen. It seems like the AFC is pretty competitive, and how about the NBA too? It's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about that.
Preseason games start on Friday, my friend.
Yep, I'll be watching.
Oh, you and I both. You and I both. In fact, I got to get you on before the season starts. So I'm going to go ahead and arrange with your agent, a.k.a. your dad, to see what we can work out on a time and date that works for you, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on the upcoming NBA season. Plus, you said you had a lot to say on the Wall Westbrook trade. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And Chris, you're welcome to join as well. I know the NFL is usually your forte, but I know you've got some things to say when it comes to the NBA.
Yeah, I definitely do. And likewise, you need to come on our show. Dom and I were just talking about that today. We like having guests on. You're our resident NBA expert this side of Dom. So stay tuned. You're going to hear from us in your inbox at some point. We'd love to have you on as well. But in addition to Harden and Westbrook being traded, I think something that's kind of flown below the radar is the return of KD. What will the new Nets look like? They've got Steve Nash, first-time coach, and I didn't realize this. This just dawned upon me. Mike D'Antoni is going to be kind of his right-hand man on the bench, so it'll be interesting to see how they spread the ball this year and if this team is legitimately a contender in the East.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, I'm excited for the upcoming season. Yes, I am obviously an unabashed Lakers fan. I mean, I host the Lakers Fast Break. What do you expect? But the Lakers do look very strong. Am I as high on them as everybody else who is already giving them the Larry O'Brien trophy? I've learned over the years that I'm not going to be overconfident. I do think they have currently right now the best team that's slated to go ahead and for a repeat in this case. But I don't think the chasm is as far as people think. I think like every other team, they are one injury away, like either LeBron or an AD injury away from having their season derailed a bit, and also the same for every other NBA team. I don't think there's any one team that can sustain a superstar injury and still call themselves a championship frontrunner. So I will say this, that I do think the Lakers are looking strong. But again, you and I will have to talk about that. Dom, Chris, you're both on the show. And obviously, if I'm able and fortunate enough to come onto your show whenever that invitation comes along, I'll be happy to go ahead and share my entire thoughts in the NBA as well. But again, everyone, it's just so great having you watching and listening to us. We cannot thank you enough. Trey S., want to give you final prompts for that awesome question that you had. Hope you get your chores done, my friend. I know I got some chores coming up here. I've got some trash I have to go ahead and take out because it's trash day. And you know what? I think my trash was my picks. I think I want to put my picks out in the trash from last weekend because that's where they belong. But before we head on out, guys, I want to go ahead and once again remind everybody, please, if you can help us out here at the show, this really would help us out. And if you're interested, cover your ears, Dom. When I say this, if you cover your ears, it is Thrive Fantasy. Okay, you can download the app today on whatever your Google Play Store or the App Store for Apple. That's the Thrive Fantasy app. If you are interested in daily fantasy sports from the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, PGA, or esports, player props on each of these, and they only deal with the well-known, higher-end players that are in these leagues, not some of the lower-ranked dudes. You don't have to go ahead and do tons of research. They do it all for you to go ahead and make sure that you can go ahead and select only the players that you are familiar with in these sports. So when you go to the app, that's the Thrive Fantasy app that's now available on App Store or Play Store, or you go to ThriveFantasy.com. That's www.ThriveFantasy.com. Type in this code, 3 letters, LFB, for Lakers Fast Break, of course. LFB, you type in those letters and you too can get, like I said before, they will match up to $50 as long as your first deposit is over $20 or more. So they will match up to $50 on that. I say that's a heck of a deal for your daily fantasy sports option. Go to ThriveFantasy.com or Thrive Fantasy wherever you get your apps. Well, guys, I want to thank you again so much for being a part of today's show. I'm looking forward to Week 14 in the NFL. And I'll tell you what, we'll be back strong. And yes, we will be back again next week right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football.